So we're here with the founder of Hyperice, Anthony Katz. And Anthony and I, we've known each other for about 18 years. And I've seen your company from the very beginning, but most people don't know kind of what it is and where it's really come from and how you've pioneered the recovery category. So why don't you talk a little bit about like the history of Hyperice and where you see the recovery industry today?
Yeah, so Hyperice is kind of referred to as a sports recovery company. That term recovery, used to imply things that athletes do post-workout, post-training, post-game. And it's sort of become a catch-all term as really anything generated around body care. Mm-hmm. So you see in the proliferation of this wellness category that we kind of, in wellness, I don't think has much meaning anymore either, because there's so much, supplements could be wellness.
Exactly.
What is wellness? And so where we specifically kind of focus is, and I say this with pride, that we are a hardware company, and as much as the investment banking community frowns on that term, hardware is still part of our life. Mm-hmm. We still, as humans, use devices and products every day. Some of the biggest and best companies in the world are still hardware companies. We really focus on hardware that is geared to change the physiology of the human body in a way that could help in an athlete's recovery, treatment of an injury. A big one is warm-up and movement preparation for injury prevention, day-to-day body maintenance, and overall wellness. So while the term is recovery, it really encompasses just like body care. Anything to, what we say, our just do it is move better. We're trying to create products and habits that enable people of all ages and demographics to move better. If you really think about one of the definitions of aging, it's the loss of movement over time. And we're trying to kind of, give people a sort of a sip of the fountain of youth of like, if you can do all these things and create these habits using our products, it'll enable you to do the things you love to do longer. So, there's two things. There's doing things longer, so there are longevity, but then there's also doing things better. And I think that part of losing our youth is that we used to be maybe good at something and we enjoyed it. And as you get older, you kind of lose the ability to move. And you're not as good at something, and that kind of causes people to maybe stop playing a sport or stop doing something. And there's a freedom in being able to do things that you love to do for as long as you can. So we're all about like trying to unlock that for people. So recovery is the term, but it really encompasses all those things I mentioned.
Yeah, and you talked a little bit about warm up in that. That's something that you've pioneered with the Viper and the Venom, right? But you have a new product, and you talked about Move Better is your Just Do It. So you have a new product with Nike, the Hyper Boot. So why don't you talk a little about how that came about, and then what kind of reception you've seen from athletes so far?
Yeah, so warm up kind of implies like, oh, this thing I have to do before I play, and some people look at it as this kind of chore. I kind of change it to like movement prep, which is that if we are going to put our body through a series of dynamic movements, and sports are a series of movements, right? We want to put the body in the optimal state to start moving. Well, why optimal? Because the optimal body, if you get the body in the optimal state, you reduce the risk of injury. And in the process of reducing the risk of injury, your body has less friction, and we have improved tissue glide, which means that we're going to perform better. Our body's going to move more efficiently. So I don't know what's the side effect and what's the primary effect. Are we warming up so we can perform better, and the side effect is we're preventing injury, or are we preventing injury and the side effect is increased performance? Yeah. When we look at our products, we look at offering a suite. Like I look at it sort of how Apple looks at it, where you have your Mac is like your hub. You have your iPhone, which you take everywhere with you. You have your AirPods, which are situational. You might have an Apple TV, and it's this ecosystem of hardware that all kind of serves the purpose of communication, entertainment, all the things that like we kind of run our life off the Apple ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And so what I wanted to do is create a similar ecosystem for active people or the athlete, which is like, I have my device where I warm up. I have my device that like I do all my movement prep injury prevention that I recover with. If I have an injury, I could treat it. And on my day-to-day body maintenance, I just do these things just like brushing our teeth and taking a shower. We wash the outside of our body. We should cleanse the inside of our body. And so we look at it through that lens of like providing the suite of product that there's no magic bullets. The Hyperboot is our Nike collab. That came about as an idea that we brought to Nike because we wanted to make it did not start with let's make a shoe and let's put this technology in the shoe. It started out with like we wanted to make a portable device that focused on the foot, ankle, and Achilles. You start talking that through and you start picturing a shoe.
Yeah, and this is before the rash of Achilles injuries in the NBA, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's been the trend in Achilles ruptures has been going up since kind of the mid-2000 teens. And there's not one reason why. There's a variety of reasons, but it was not really specifically for that. But
it will help, probably.
But again, I always say is like when we put the foot, ankle, Achilles in the optimal state to move, we're increasing the tissue pliability, we're increasing ankle mobility and the glide in the Achilles. Those things are going to prevent that injury, but it's also, as a performance enhancer, you get out of the boots and you feel it and you're like, wow, my legs never feel like this. There's nothing I could do with my hands or with kind of just ordinary devices to make my foot, ankle, and Achilles feel like this. So we wanted to create an experience that you just could not replicate in any other way. And we needed a footwear partner, and Nike was just the first and only call because, they're the only brand that would have kind of gone all into this idea because of their dedication to, breaking through for the athlete. Yeah,
and your marketing ethos has always been very, very similar to Nike's, right?
I mean, the company is hugely inspired by Nike. When I grew up, Nike was sort of the most aspirational brand. So
still is to a degree.
If you're going to have a sports company, I just don't see how you get around, the Nike influence. It's sort of like, it's like a rock band that, it's the Beatles, right? It's like they touched every aspect of the culture and Nike, crossing over from, kind of sports to like the broader culture. And so you always, when you have a startup, you have to be aiming for something, and it was very, it was our aspirations to, if we could create any sort of that Nike magic, and to be able to do a collaboration with them, kind of allowed us to kind of like get a taste of that, and so that's how the project kind of started, and kind of where we hope it continues to go.
Yeah, and our listeners focus on a lot of big public companies and like researching them, and your company has been one of the most innovative companies over the last couple of decades in the sports space. But if you look at the bigger companies that are public, that operate worldwide, there hasn't been a lot of innovation from those type of companies. So why do you think that's the case? And why do you think most of the innovations have come from smaller companies like yours?
So I would say that the larger companies, focused on footwear and apparel. So Nike, Adidas, Under Armour. Now you have, upstarts like On and Hoka. New Balance is sort of having a resurgence. Asics. When you focus on footwear and apparel, innovation really happens at the margins. It's not like we've discovered all, like we're not adding to the chart of the elements, right? Yeah. So we're not going to go unearth some new foam that's 20% more responsive and bouncier. It's like foam is the basis of a sole of a shoe. Is so it's like baking bread. Like you can change the composition of flour, water, and baking soda and stuff, but fundamentally it's similar. And Nike's been really innovative in how they've sort of experimented, manipulated, and come across more responsive foams that you can mold in different ways. Yeah. I mean, Adidas has.
But it's been iterative. It hasn't been transformative.
Right. And I would say that the proliferation of manufacturing technology has kind of the advantage that one company has over another is not as great as it used to be. Yeah. Right. The dynamic range of what like a top in class product to what like a much smaller company, they still might have, that smaller company might have access to similar technologies and molding and things like that. Yeah. So footwear and apparel is a lot of materials and a lot of, and there is obviously engineering involved, and But it's hard for them to really take big leaps. So what you saw in the 2000s was them trying to acquire other companies. Adidas acquired TaylorMade, and Nike had Converse Hurley, and I think Umbro they had at one point. And so it's technology in our space didn't really exist until the advancement of lithium-ion battery technology, which allowed these like devices that manipulated the body to come in smaller form factors that became consumer products. Larger companies are just more, they are not so, I guess they're reactive. They're reactive.
They're not tech savvy.
They're also just not, like, they're not going to be the ones experimenting with these new technologies and trying to roll them out to the public.
Yeah.
So you have to wait till a startup does it, and sort of we were that company. And then once it becomes sort of, accepted in the culture more broadly, then you start to see, some of the bigger players take an interest in a category. When I first, started, I remember people at some of the bigger companies saying, "Oh yeah, that new recovery kind of category thing," and it's like, will it catch on, or is it just people would say, is it just a fad?
Yeah,
I thought that was crazy because I think that the train of looking for better health is only going in one direction. It's never been put in reverse.
Yeah,
and so. We're part of that, and I think that, like, you're asking why the big public companies are not as innovative. They're innovative in their own way. Mm-hmm. They're just they live in a category.
They're not taking risks.
But they're living in a category where innovation is pretty iterative. It's not like, oh wow, we just found this new material that just is completely transformative.
Yeah, I always think of the iPhone, where it's like there were smartphones before, but the iPhone, took the touchscreen and that technology and really combined it with what was already kind of being done, and kind of forged a whole new type of device. But since then, everything else has been kind of iterative, right?
But the difference there is this is 142 different suppliers with 142 different components. Yeah. So what we call the downstream supply chain. So think about the Zeiss lens comes from Germany. There's chips from Taiwan. There's Monster chips from Japan. I think there's something like 30 countries participate in the supply chain. Yeah. And so what an innovation like the iPhone does is when you're going to sell hundreds of millions of a product, the downstream supply chain starts innovating for you. Mm. So
because they want your business.
Because they want the business. Mm. So like if I'm making a chip or like maybe a lens, Zeiss is like, we need to make the best lens in the world so that we can sell hundreds of millions of lenses to Apple. Mm-hmm. And the motivation for them to stay on top and make the best lens, because the second that some other startup might have something better, I mean, think about the loss of business that would be to a company like Zeiss. So, and that's without knowing anything about the arrangement there. I'm just saying that basically Apple, because this is a platform. So all the suppliers in the sub-supply chain are basically motivated to say, if I make the best, whatever it is, component, I'm going to have a multi-billion-dollar business because just on the iPhone alone. Yeah. And that is what keeps the innovation pipeline going, not just like Apple can imagine the overall experience and the software and how it all comes together in the design. But innovation now, and this is the importance of why globalization is so important, is that we need to be able to pool the brain power. A company like Apple wants to make sure that they have good relations with Germany, with Japan, with Taiwan, because they want to be able to be able to buy the components at scale and don't want any interruptions in that supply chain because it affects their innovations. So we're all interdependent and we can't unwind that sort of relationship. Yeah,
we'll get to the supply chains here in a little bit, but let's talk about like what do you think makes an innovative leader? You've obviously been an innovative leader. You've probably seen a lot of innovative leaders and talked to them. What do you think makes that up? We know, we've seen also leaders that are the opposite of innovation, where they almost only talk about the numbers, right? And there's no really spirit or ethos to the company or to innovation.
Shares.
Buying back shares, basically just, using financial metrics and magic to try to create value. But in reality, innovation is really what creates value. So what do you think makes an innovative leader?
Well, in an age where technology now is available to everyone, right? It's been scaled. There's more companies of different sizes making components and technology than ever before. Really what the innovator's job now is almost to imagine the end experience or the end product, because you could always work backwards to the technology. So it's not crucial that, it's crucial that the innovator understands the general landscape of where technology is at, where are chips at, what's battery power and capacity at.
But they need to understand the customer and what they need.
Yeah, so you always start with the consumer first and work backwards to the technology. So to me, what an innovator is, the ultimate example, to me, the greatest innovator of our time is Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs didn't come up with I want to make a hard drive that plays music. He said, I want 1,000 songs in my pocket. So I can imagine the experience that I want to have. And then we work backwards. So you go to the design team. Well, what would that take? Then you go to engineering. Well, what would that take? Well, it would take a hard drive that has this capacity. And at that time, they were too big to fit in your pocket. And then what happened was Toshiba came out with the 1.8 hard drive. And one of the sales guys was in Japan at a trade show and said, Toshiba just came out with a hard drive small enough. So Toshiba's innovation, now it opened up the door for Apple to create the product they wanted to create. And that gave us the first iPod, which is one of the most transformative products in my lifetime. And that's a perfect example of an innovator, a guy that said, I have the end experience of what I want, but the technology needs to come along. So you're an aggregator, right? So an innovator is an aggregator, and it's someone who can foresee and see around the corner of like where technology is going. Because I always say technology, all it does is limit our imagination. And as technology gets better, our imagination scope gets wider and wider. And you could say, hey, some days people are gonna say, I want a car that I could charge for 5 minutes and it goes 1,000 miles. That will happen someday. But you have to imagine the car first and the whole experience first, and then you work backwards. And when that technology becomes available, you back into it.
So the ethos of innovation is imagination.
I would say it's imagination, creativity, and aggregation. Is that understanding that it doesn't all happen in your building.
But it may not be you that actually does it, right? If you have a team that can source these things and figuring it out, surrounding yourself with right people.
Leadership is by surrounding yourself with people that can enhance your ideas. So you might have the initial idea and someone might come to you and refine that idea and make it into something better, saying, hey, I know you wanted it to do this, but what if we went this direction, and maybe, and being open. So I think it's like, you have to be imaginative, creative. You have to be collaborative. You have to be open. And I would say you have to be worldly, because it's not all like, we have products that have components from all over, and to be open that like there might be a startup in Slovenia that has a really cool technology that no one else is going to have. It's going to make your product better. But if you're not open to like exploring and talking to other people from other places or traveling to other places, then you're just kind of like you're limiting your ability to make products.
So you think the whole reality distortion field from like Steve Jobs is like maybe it's a little too extreme. You need to have that collaborative mind where you're able to also maybe envision something, but compromise here and there to actually fit what is possible.
I mean, because people don't. Sometimes really driven people don't like the word compromise because they think they're giving up something. But sometimes compromises get you to a better end result. And so, the whole like, don't let,
the perfect be the enemy of good.
I think that it's important that that a person has enough humility to say, I might have good ideas, but other people also have good ideas and can make my ideas better. And being open and not rigid, and not being threatened by other A players to bring, and by surrounding yourself with A players. I would say you always know another A player because the A player is never threatened to be in a room with another A player. That when you know you have a B player is when that B player is threatened by other people's ideas.
So speaking of other people's ideas, is there any other companies, leaders in your space over the last 5 years that have accomplished something that you think has been truly innovative, that you were like, wow, I wish I thought of that idea or came up with that and made that part of my company? In
my space, no. I mean, James Dyson is a huge, like I would say, on my Mount Rushmore of like in modern times, like, because I think there's a difference between inventing something and then reinventing something. And James Dyson has reinvented things that were just accepted as, we're just going to accept that hair dryers have
Or a
an
certain
intake,
way.
and they heat a metal grill, and then it goes through.
And how many other industries
And
could
there's a million-
be reinvented that way as well?
Right, and like, you know, vacuum cleaners. Well, they have a bag, and then
Yeah.
you know, it's like he reinvented the vacuum cleaner. You know, the air purifier, the hair dryer, things that we use every day that we kind of take for granted as like, these are just kind of, there's 100 products in the market. They're all kind of different versions of themselves.
Yeah.
And then Dyson came along and reinvented it.
Yeah.
And so I would say that like I give just as much credit to someone who's a reinventor like him. In our specific space, you know, Normatec was, you know, is our best-selling product by revenue. And is a huge, you know, part of our brand identity. And that was not a product that was part of our original product line. It was an acquisition that we made. And that was sort of the spirit behind why we made that acquisition. Was I said, I think that pneumatic compression is at the infancy stages. There's more people that use Normatec now. There's more people that buy Normatec now in a year than in the whole history of the company before we bought them, and they were a company for 15 years or something before that.
Well, you brought the price point down.
Right, and that's the whole, you know, and also I think that we put Normatec in a better brand vehicle that reached more people and then expanded our distribution globally.
Yeah.
But that was something where I was like, wow, when I first got in it, and I said, like, this makes a measurable, it checked all the boxes. The experience when you use it feels good. You feel good after, and then there's science to back it up. That's the trinity of what makes a great product in our space. So to answer your question, you said the last 5 years. Well, we bought Normatec 5 years ago, so I would say that was the one that, and we just felt we needed it. We felt that you couldn't have a comprehensive recovery brand without the technology. And there was nothing that we didn't have the chops in-house to do what they did. It was developed by a MIT MD, and there was a huge amount of acceptance around their technology. I would say, like, you know, Normatec was the one, and we ended up acquiring it.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about acquisitions in a second, but before we close on innovation, we can't talk today about innovation without talking about AI. So where do you think AI is going to help impact your industry, sports performance, et cetera? Do you see any lanes that is going to take certain products, certain verticals to the next level, or is it too early to tell?
Well, number one, I think it's early to tell. Number two, I'm probably not the best person to answer this question, but I will offer my opinion as a hardware developer that I think there have been and are going to continue to be a lot of failed attempts to try to come up with some sort of algorithm that tells people that their body is in the fully recovered state. Like, I've had so many, numerous startup software engineers come and say, I figured out a way to take data from an Apple Watch or from a...
I wear Aura. I Aura ring. So Aura does give me that, like if I'm in a rested state and how I'm feeling, how I should, if I'm ready to work out or whatever. My
mentor has a great saying, don't trust the scan, trust the man.
Yeah.
And when people say, well, you know, they would come and say, well, this could tell you exactly when a muscle is fully recovered. And I'm like, you know what tells me when a muscle is fully recovered? When
it's not sore anymore.
When my brain tells me it's not.
Yeah.
I think that our brains are more perceptive than any AI model can ever be. An AI model is something that just has high-level pattern recognition.
Yeah.
Our muscles are a liquid syrup surrounded by connective tissue that connects to other muscles to try to quantify in any accurate way how recovered a muscle is. I mean, you have to then it becomes like you get into the word, what does recovered even mean? Like, I would say recovery, if you ask me to define recovery, I say when the body can return to full range of motion without restriction, soreness, pain, or limitation.
Yeah.
So like if I did a series of motion and I can't feel any friction, I can't feel any restrictions on my movement patterns or limitations, that my brain could tell me that. You know, like, so you don't think it's going to impact your space? No, I will never say that much compared to a lot of other industries. I don't think that. I think the human body is so complex and it's there's so many variables with every person that I don't think we're going to have some agreed upon algorithm that's going to be like, this is the end all be all, and this is going to tell you, and then, the coaches are going to look at it and say, well, my guy's not recovered. Well, it's like, the thing that bothers me about that is that, like, as someone who is an athlete and who grew up around sports, do you know how many great moments in sports have been done by guys who were dead ass tired, or women that were dead ass tired?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the Michael Jordan flu game where they just sit him out, so we would never have the Michael Jordan flu game.
Yeah.
Kirk Gibson's home run, where he would we're not going to play him. He's not in the fully recovered state.
Yeah.
It's absurd to think that, like, I just think that, technology has limits, and I just think that our own human experience it should be enhanced by technology, and it should not. It should never dictate our lives.
So
it could inform us, but not dictate.
So you think the AI craze has gone a little too far?
I think that I think
in some applications,
people a lot smarter than me are saying it's the biggest technological revolution of our time. And I lived through the internet, which was a pretty big one. It changed the way we live. It flattened the world. It connected the world. If this is going to be bigger than that, then we're in for some. But I also don't know that it happens sweeping tomorrow, and we're all just going to be out of work, and our lives are going to be running on autopilot. I don't see that world now. And look, and I'm the first person to say I could be wrong, but that's just my opinion.
So let's pivot over to talk about acquisitions. So you've made some acquisitions throughout the years, some large, some smaller. Obviously, Normatec was your largest. So what have you learned from those acquisitions, and what makes a good acquisition target? So
we've made 4 acquisitions to date, all for different reasons, all various sizes. The first one was strictly an IP acquisition for what was a precursor to the modern day massage gun, which became a massive category for us. So it was, at the time, we weren't buying a company. We were more buying the IP around a new way to create a percussion device. Before the whole massage gun craze happened, there was some early versions of massage guns that existed, and we had brought to market a product called the Raptor, and we did it kind of in conjunction with Gary Vitti, who was the head trainer of the Lakers at the time. And we wanted to own the IP around it because we wanted to kind of take the roots of that and like kind of grow, and add, IP to it. And to this day, that is a big part of our business. And so it was a strategic acquisition strictly around IP. The second acquisition was Normatec, which they had the leading product in the category. We thought that was going to be we made a big bet on the future that pneumatic compression was going to continue to grow and be, and if that product was in our vehicle, that it would thrive more, which it did. Wow. The third acquisition was a startup with a bunch of young engineers called RecoverX that was specializing in thermal technology, portable thermal technology. And we have multiple product lines now that feature that technology. And that was really an acquisition for talent. We liked the young engineers. We thought they were really good product developers. We were looking to add to our product team. So, one for IP, one for kind of brand positioning and product positioning in the category, one for talent, and then we brought in that team and developed kind of rejuvenated 2 or 3 new product lines for us. And then that technology ended up going to the Hyperboot. So, the fourth one was just like, it was sort of, we took a chance at a time where we were looking at new categories. It was a big topic. It was very topical of, amongst athletes of like kind of mental wellness.
Mental health, yeah.
And, we took a chance on a hardware device that connected to an app, and it just, it didn't work in our brand, and it's fine. If you go 3 for 4, it's not bad. It'd be great to go 4 for 4.
Yeah.
But I think the lesson from that, and I always say you learn more from your mistakes than you do your wins. And the lesson from that was just a brand has to do things that stay true to who they are and what they're about. When they don't do that, the market responds. It's the best indicator. You might think, hey, we're doing this for the right reasons. This is who we are. And the market says, no, that's not why.
Yeah.
It's why certain brands make acquisitions that go to zero, because they just, they misread the market and they misread how the market's going to react. The market's actually more in tune with like a brand's identity. Sometimes a brand's not self-aware enough to know that like, hey, you don't have permission to just do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Like Apple's not going to launch a skincare line, right? because it's just not true to who they are and what they do.
Yeah.
And just to go and get extra revenue. And I see brands do that all the time. They go into new categories. It's a revenue grab. Is not really true to who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times they'll make acquisitions and I'm like, well, how are you? They can't help this company. This is just kind of, they're just, using acquisitions as a mean to just like to grow revenue because they can't generate their own product line. It happens all the time.
So what do you think is most important in an acquisition target? Is it IP? Is it talent acquisition? Is it finding the right price?
All of those things. Plus, I would say yes. Well, but sometimes you might not need like let's say it's apparel, right? Nike acquired Commerce in 2003, not for the IP. I mean, the brand IP, yes, but fashion's cyclical, and they kind of caught Commerce on a way down, and then right when they bought it, it had a big resurgence, and now it's a huge, revenue positive acquisition for them. So, I mean, everything I think you said, IP. Sometimes it's talent. It's not a lot of times. It's not going to be all these things. It could be one. It could be multiple. Yeah. But sometimes it could just be timing. You get something right before it goes big in the culture, and you get there early, but
it's about having a vision for like what you're going to do with this company, as opposed to like you said, like just to do it because it's a popular category or you're grabbing users or something like that.
Growth. Yeah. It's like, hey, we have our product pipeline is not very good, so maybe we'll just go and tack this on, and it's going to give us the revenue we need and buy us some time to do our own innovation. So and I would say that, but again, the values I learned from acquisitions are: is it who you are, and is it what you're about? Yeah.
And when you make an acquisition, you have to integrate this new company. What have you learned about that? Like how difficult is that to take this company that may have a few employees? It might have, I think Normatech, you bought it, had what, 20, 30 employees?
No, like 55.
55 employees, there you go.
When you say company, just cross out the word company. How do you get taking your group of people and merge it with another group of people and bringing other, and so, we were on the West Coast, Normatech was on the East Coast, different like kind of cultures on both sides of the country. Every company kind of has their own set of values that come from the top down. We were able to make it work. I think in the end we both wanted the same thing. So like, how you get there, you kind of have to figure that out. There's been acquisitions where it's been seamless, and there's been, in one particular, like it's just like it was just very two different cultures that weren't really meant to be integrated because the missions were very different. Yeah,
you have to almost sell that to the company you're acquiring, that hey, this is our vision. I mean, this is how you come along with it.
The people part is always, anyone could sell anyone else's product. Maybe not effectively, but they could do it. It's not easy to integrate people into another group of people's value system, into their like just to their norms, to the way they do business. So I would say that in that particular case, when it comes to the hardest part of acquisitions is just getting the people to all kind of, now you worked for a company, it had a vision, that was their North Star. Yeah. Now you're on this company's, and then now the North Star is over here. And then maybe it was kind of in the same direction, but there's always going to be, just new dynamics. And how do you get people, you might have been senior at this company and now you're more junior, or, and then how did and it's not just hard for the companies getting acquired, the acquiring company, and now all your people have this new set of, there's always a little bit of a natural, humans are tribal by nature, and a little bit in group, and it's the new guy, and so it's but managing that is a real challenge for management. That's really it's a management.
So the whole synergies because of acquisition is a lot harder than it sounds.
It's easy for the people that stare at a spreadsheet and look at the numbers and say this numbers plus this numbers is this, without any consideration for companies are made of humans. Humans are complicated, and it makes the acquisitions complicated. Yeah,
and you talked about how the world was crazy at that time. What do you think that taught you about like timing and acquisition? Do you think that you'll think twice when things are a little frothy in markets, the economy, and do you think it may be better to wait for times when maybe you're in a recession, or and be able to find acquisitions at more reasonable prices?
More that Black Swan events, there's some Black Swan events that don't last very long, and the paradigm shift is not as big. COVID was a prolonged Black Swan event that totally changed human behavior, our interactions, the way we interact with products and brands. And you see, like, someone could write a book on just the nuttiness that went on for that 2-year period of acquisitions, brands, and companies that like spiked like this, and then all of a sudden, like when the world went back to normal.
Yeah.
But like, it was value. Like I would say, in my industry, like the connected fitness was just sort of like the Peloton craze pulled Tonal and Mirror and all these other brands into valuation stratospheres that were completely untethered to reality.
Yeah. So I think Lulu bought Mirror.
Mirror,
Yeah. And that hasn't gone well, I think, with them.
Yeah. So I would say that don't make decisions in a Black Swan event during a Black Swan event. Let things settle out.
Let
things settle out.
Yeah.
And hopefully we don't have to face another Black Swan event.
Yeah.
But that's the whole thing that makes them Black Swan events. You don't know when they're going to come.
Well, you could argue we're in a Black Swan event right now with the trade war that we're in. So
a self
inflicted.
But usually Black Swan events are,
external.
9/11 was a Black Swan event. The financial crisis was even though it was self-inflicted over a long period of time, but yes, I would say this is kind of more in that category.
How would you say that's changed the way that you thought about investing in your supply chain or adjusting your supply chain?
Well, the issue that I think all businesses that make physical products now are facing is just the inability to plan and forecast, and that slows investment. And we are just waiting for things to settle down and normalize. Either way, even if you just want clarity. Bad news is okay. That will give us guidance to go somewhere else.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've looked at options. It's just you don't know which way to go because you don't know how it's all going to settle out.
It's we're on a football field and the goalposts are moving, the yards moving, the end zones are moving. You don't know what play to call. You don't know. Yeah. It's just, and the hard part about it is that you think that it's like, okay, so this is the no-fly zone here. The tariffs are going to be too big here. Let's try here. And then all of a sudden that becomes prohibitive. And then, so it's like, well, do we keep, like, at some point this can't go on
forever. Yeah.
Because, ultimately the consumer is going to end up, paying the price, and companies will end up paying the price for it. And so, I think every company, and this is just, coming from a company that makes physical products, like, we just want to know.
Yeah.
And it would be nice to not have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Because it definitely takes a lot of bandwidth on a company's supply chain and finance and logistics people that are constantly like. And it creates inefficiencies. And and that's one thing I think that's underrated, is that the uncertainty is creating inefficiencies in business. And I think this will show up. And I think the market is disconnected from what's happening on the ground.
How have your suppliers reacted, as well as has anything surprised you about what they've done, how they've changed?
I think all suppliers are kind of in the same boat, is they're operating on the same information as us. Everyone's trying to find solutions. But I also think too, it's, the reality is we live in a highly connected, interdependent economy, and in the supply chain, it's not everything on planet Earth comes from one place. And if you want to make these sophisticated products, like I mentioned, the 142 suppliers make this. Auto industry is a perfect example. You might have. I remember, predating the tariff issue, a lot of the wire harnesses for Audi cars were made in Ukraine. And when the Ukraine war broke out, it affected Audi's production, because it just shows how delicate the global supply chain is. Yeah. And you could have one interruption. It's like, well, I can't make a car without the wire harness. Yeah. So now my whole business is at risk. So I think it's causing companies to diversify, but also dual source and develop second suppliers. But it just takes time. It's highly disruptive, and good companies did that anyway. But there has to be an understanding of the delicacy of the global supply chain.
Yeah, but you kind of have to be a larger company in order to have that, right? If you're a smaller company, you're kind of at the whims, right?
Right, and it's not easy to find. And there's certain types of products or disciplines that are not that scalable in other parts of the world.
Yeah.
So,
And so if there are, what it looks like is that the tariffs are going to come in globally anywhere from base is 10%, right? But most deals are kind of coming in between the 15 and 20% range.
Which is crazy high. I mean, like that sounds not bad.
Yeah.
If you would have told someone that a year ago,
because our effective rate was like 2.5% before, right? So you're talking about nearly a 10x for on that side. So
which is all, so it's a tax on American companies.
Yeah.
And it's front paid, that's the word. You're going to see cash flow issues because I think companies, it's not like it's after we collect the sales and the profits from all of our products. It's upfront, and so
your inventory costs,
inventory cycles, and everything.
Yeah. Right? So how do you think does this make Mexico, because of USMCA? Does this make producing in Mexico longer term more attractive if you can avoid, because most of those products are exempt from the tariffs? But we have a trade agreement that doesn't seem to really matter. I mean, we woke up one morning and it was 25% tariffs. So that's the problem, is that like the solutions are only solutions until they're subject to the same thing. And so if trade agreements are just not worth the paper they're written on, then it's really hard for us to. In theory, if the USMCA was ironclad and that gave us clear, like that's the whole point of why you sign trade agreements. Yeah. And so, but Mexico, I think I've said for years, is a massive opportunity. It's a resource-rich country, great with big tourism, young population, good demographics, unlike some of the Asian counterparts. Yeah. And I think we should be, partnering and strengthening our relationship with Mexico as much as we can. Do you think North America in general, like if you want to be less dependent on, the Asian supply chain, the North American supply chain needs to be developed, and that needs to be developed by all parties in North America, not just the United States. So I feel like companies build factories, nations build supply chains, and they build them in collaboration with other nations. And do you think that Mexico has the skill and infrastructure to eventually rival China at some point, or do you think it's going to take a while? I mean, I think people underestimate the trillions of dollars and the planning that went into. Look, there's one advantage of having a government like that is if you have really smart people that can engineer really good. Like if they want to just own manufacturing, they could basically engineer a supply. Raw materials up in the north. That goes on. You build a rail system that goes down and disperses those raw materials into the various industries. Refinement in the middle, and then you have textiles here, technology here, and then ports. I mean, you don't build that in a decade. It's taken 3 decades to build what China. So before we just think that like we're going to roll up the warehouse door and just like replicate all that, I think you see the videos of like. Think about the shipping containers and the shipping boats. But also the institutional knowledge, right? Of like how to the tooling, for example, right? Right. And like, look, we want to get better in shipping. All right, well, there's steel tariffs now. So what do you think the boats are made out of? Like there's just, I say you can't opt out of globalization any more than you could opt out of gravity. It's a force that's here and it's not going anywhere. So I think the strength of the U.S. economy to me has been that we've used globalization as a massive, massive tailwind. Yeah. And, people thought that in 2027, the Chinese economy was going to surpass the U.S. economy. That is not going to happen for the foreseeable future. Like, we're definitely, in my view, America is still the most dynamic economy, leading in all the major sectors. And we've sort of offloaded some of the most capital-intensive and cyclical parts of our economy. Yeah. And so we can focus on owning the IP and the creativity and dominate the industries. So I like to see that continue, and I just I hope it does. And I hope people realize the advantages that we've enjoyed the last 3 decades, and the people in the United States have a high standard of living now, and it's I'm not a fan of like radically changing a game that was really benefiting us. Yeah. So you deal with a lot of retailers and a lot of companies like you rely on retailers. What willingness have you seen from retailers to work with you on pricing, and how much leeway do you think they have to eat some of those
Yeah.
those price increases, and how much do you think will be passed on?
Well, I mean, not much leeway. To be honest, all businesses operate on economic models that are pretty sensitive, and they're sensitive to little, a swing 5-10% in margin is huge. I mean, it's a big impact to the business. So I think it's in the short term, figuring out like a split of who's gonna, it's gonna affect both the brand and the retailer. But ultimately, it's gonna get passed on to the consumer. I mean, it's just there's a negotiation of what's the pricing sensitivity in the particular category, because we want that price increase to cover both of there's not a lot of people think that these companies are operating on these massive, retailers aren't operating on massive
Usually
margins.
3, 4, 5% margins.
Yeah. And so these numbers, when people hear, oh, it's only going to be 10%, it's an 8% increase over what it is now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not insignificant. And so someone has to pay for that. So either companies or brands are going to be less profitable, which means they have less money for hiring and to investment, and or demand's going to go down. I mean, I just don't think that increased prices is good. It's going to be shared by everyone, but I don't know who wins in that scenario.
Yeah. Well, we live in unique times, and you run a unique business in a unique category. So, congratulations on all your success, and thanks for being here.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here, and I just only hope good things for the global economy going forward.
Awesome.